Hi, today I will be presenting my presentation on my narrative writing unit plan. All right. The unit summary, so I will have 4 slides for the unit summary. The first one will be the focus, and the last 3 will be the lesson standards and components. The focus of my unit plan is citizenship and narrative writing. The content areas are social studies and ELA, and the grade that I chose to focus on was 2nd grade. Lesson 1 has one standard, and that is RL 2.5, describe the overall structure of a story, including describing how the beginning introduces the story, the events unfold in the middle, and the ending concludes the action. The objective that I wrote for this lesson was the student will be able to describe the structure of a story. The student will be able to explain what narrative writing is and its 5 elements. The student will be able to identify the beginning, middle, and end parts of a story. The student will be able to identify the 5 narrative writing elements of a specific fiction book. This lesson plan is for 1 day of the unit. The graphic organizer included on the next slide will be used to allow students to practice identifying the 5 elements of writing, the 5 elements of stories and the parts of the story. So the beginning, middle, and end, and then the 5 elements that we saw were used for 5 elements of narrative writing. We also see those 5 elements come into play in our stories, so the kids will be identifying those elements within the stories. The graphic organizer will also be used in the later lessons when they begin to develop their narrative writing. The information sheets on the next slides will be used as resources for the students to refer back to in the later activities. For this lesson, I chose the formative assessment of them using their knowledge of the 5 elements in the beginning, middle, and end parts of a story. So they would read the book, The Giving Tree, and then they would fill in the narrative writing graphic organizer with the breakdown of the Giving Tree. So they would they would fill in each block of that narrative writing graphic organizer for the book, The Giving Tree. So here is the narrative writing graphic organizer with the 5 elements and the plot development. Here is the information sheets. And for lesson 2, I will introduce 2 social studies and 1 writing standard. The first social studies standards is exemplify characteristics of good citizenship through historical figures and everyday citizens. The second social studies standard is explain why it's important for citizens to participate in their community. And the writing standard says write narratives in which they recount a well-elaborated event or short sequence of events, include details to describe actions, thoughts, and feelings, and use temporal words to signal event order and provide a sense of closure. Part A says with guidance and support from adults, organize information and ideas around a topic to plan, to prepare, to write. And with guidance and support from adults and peers, focus on a topic and strengthen writing as needed by revising and editing. The objectives that I wrote for these 2 days in this lesson number 2 is I can describe what citizenship is and how to be a good citizen. I can explain why Martin Luther King Jr. was a good citizen. And I can plan and outline a narrative writing piece with citizenship as the theme by using the elements of writing. This lesson plan is for day 2 and 3 of the unit. And this lesson will be introducing citizenship to the students and how we can be good citizens. The graphic organizer on the next slide would be used during the class discussion with the students on citizenship. That would be teacher-led. And then the students will begin developing their writing by brainstorming through using the narrative writing graphic organizer. So here is the graphic organizer we would use for our discussion with the questions, what is citizenship? How can we be a good citizen? And why was Martin Luther King Jr. a good citizen? And for lesson number 3, day 4 and 5, we have the second social studies standard, we have the writing standard included, and we have brought back in the ELA standard. And the objective that I wrote for this lesson is I can write a narrative piece on how to be a good citizen and what good citizenship is. I can include all 5 elements of narrative writing in my writing. I can also show that my writing has a beginning, middle, and end. I can revise and edit my narrative writing piece. I can present my writing to others. I can identify each of the 5 elements of narrative writing within my piece. I can explain the development of the plot of my writing. And this lesson is for day 4 and 5 of the unit plan. This lesson will be focused on the students using their resources to write a narrative with the theme being how to be a good citizen. The students will use the resources in these slides to develop, write, revise, and edit their piece. So those are our 3 lesson plans. And here is I would give them a 5-page packet for their brainstorming. And on the beginning, middle, and end sheets, they would write the beginning part of their narrative writing, the middle part, and the end part. Then here is a revisions checklist that I created for them for our stations, and an editing checklist for them for their stations when we do the writer's workshop within this lesson. So examples of activities and rationale. In lesson number 1, I am choosing to show you my guided practice activity. The students will get into their groups and send the group leader to the classroom library. The group leader will read the book aloud and group members will follow along. Once the book has been read, the students will work together to identify the characters, setting, theme, point of view, and conflict of the story. They will also summarize each part of the story in 1 to 2 sentences and write the summaries down in the beginning, middle, and end sections of the worksheet. Each group will send 2 students from the group to the front of the classroom to present their work and tell their classmates about their book. The rationale behind this is the students will work together in a group to practice what was done in the teacher input part of the lesson. The teacher will read a book and use the graphic organizer to break down the story. This allows the students to practice what they have learned as a group. The students can pick a book that interests them. It introduces them to elements of writing and the parts of a story, identification of these components within a story, and they get to practice their presentation skills. In lesson number 2, I am choosing to share with you my teacher input activity. The teacher will read the book, Who Was Martin Luther King Jr.? Then I will play the song, Citizenship by Red Grammer. The class will have a discussion about citizenship that is led by the teacher. The teacher will use the following questions to lead the conversation. What is good citizenship? What does good citizenship look like? What can you do to be a good citizen, and why, or what did Martin Luther King Jr. do that made him a good citizen? The rationale behind why I chose this and think this is a good activity is I liked incorporating a class discussion as one of the instructional activities because it allows for the student to connect, have a conversation with the teacher, and the teacher is able to assess what the students know and have learned. This conversation will assist the students when they begin writing because they will have a better understanding of citizenship, what citizenship looks like, what someone can do to be a good citizen, and why Martin Luther King Jr. was considered a good citizen. This is what their narrative writing piece will be about. So we have pre-exposed them to the topic that they will be writing about, so they have more knowledge. And that's why I think this was a good part of my lesson. For lesson number 3, the guided practice activity that I had was that this activity is implemented through stations. So they'll go to station 1, grab their writer's box. Then they will write for 10 minutes on their piece. They will go to station 2 to receive a check on their work to be allowed to move on to the revising stage. They will be given a revisions checklist. The student will revise their work with a partner for 10 minutes. For the independent practice part of this lesson, so I'm going over 2 different parts of this lesson for the activity because it meshes. The students will finish up their work after going to station number 3 to receive a check to move on to editing. The students will work or edit their work for 10 minutes using the editing checklist, and then the students will go to station 4 to turn in their work and their work box. In their work box are all of their resources, their brainstorming, anything they use to write is within that box, as well as their paper. The rationale is that these activities allow the students to be responsible for their work through the use of checklists, working with a partner to peer read each other's work thus far, and edit their own work so that it is ready to be turned in as a final draft. It allows the teacher to see what each student is capable of through their final draft, and the teacher uses their final draft as a summative assessment for the unit. My reflection for this unit plan activity project is I feel very comfortable with lesson planning and understand each part of a lesson plan. The positive of my lessons. I think I did a good job in incorporating a variation of activities. I liked how I incorporated social studies into my lessons. The use of stations is something that I always enjoyed, and I feel that it makes lessons more enjoyable. What needs improvement? Measurement of time for each part of the lesson. I feel like I struggle with gauging that, or will struggle with gauging that. Incorporating different types of assessments. I'm not quite sure how to incorporate those in lessons to be beneficial to me and the student. The use of resources and scaffolding through my lessons so that it can progressively get more difficult. I feel like I kind of did a good job, but I feel like in the future with possibly other content, I will be unsure of how to do that. Who do you think, what do I think about this unit plan? I feel that this unit plan helped me understand how lesson plans need to be aligned within unit and how we as teachers need to plan so that students are progressing throughout the lesson. This unit plan allowed me to understand how to use different content areas within a unit. I feel like I really learned a lot and grew. I've never really done a unit plan like this before with using different content areas and being this thorough, and I really think it has helped me and prepared me to do well in the classroom. Thank you so much.